Okay, good morning, everyone. I'm going to open this meeting for the Polk County Board of Commissioners for Tuesday, May 27th. All commissioners are present. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge of allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
First item up on the agenda is for comments for items not on the agenda. Going once, going twice. Okay, moving on. Looking for approval of the agenda.
I move approval.
I'll second.
It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, passed unanimously. Approval of minutes of May 20th.
Approve.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, passed unanimously. Next up, we have a HUD FY26 proposed budget impacts to local housing authorities. And Jessica Blakely and Kristen Elbutte have been invited. Please come forward. And for the record, do give us your name, rank, who you work for.
I'm Christian Edelblut, the Director of the West Valley Housing Authority, serving all of Polk County.
Hello, I'm Jessica Blakely, and I'm a resident of Polk County. My full-time job is at the Salem Housing Authority. All right. Well, thanks for having me here today. I wanted to, as I work with a lot of our national organizations in advocacy for affordable housing, this has been something that's been brought up and the impact substantial. And so I wanted to bring it to our local Board of Commissioners. Just for some background, I live in Polk County, moved here in 2017, and then applied for the board position for West Valley Housing Authority, for which I served until January of 2024. I chose to step down because we have some jurisdictional boundary crossings of maybe some future developments coming up. And there was a perceived conflict for HUD since I work for the Salem Housing Authority. So I haven't been acting in that capacity for about a year and a half now, but definitely still important to me because I've learned a lot about the Housing Authority and who it serves and its reach and the limited resources that already come from HUD to this area. In recent advocacy efforts with the state, I recognized that a lot of our other legislators didn't realize that there was a direct allocation to local housing authorities. And so coming here today, I don't want to presume that you know all of these things. So I kind of just want to walk through some of the attachments and bring your attention to some things that we're concerned about. First off is the skinny budget, the presidential's proposed budget. Now I understand that's not reality. Congress has to go through their appropriations bill. This is just more of like a roadmap or starting place, and likely we'll end up somewhere between where we currently are as far as direct allocation and the skinny budget proposal. So I just want to maybe explain what this means for Polk County. So on the first page, you'll see their recommendation to take and group up a lot of our federal resources that we receive today and put them into a state rental assistance block grant, which that would be a substantial hit to our local housing authority. And I'll get into those actual dollars here in just a moment. So basically taking the direct allocation that we receive right now as housing authorities and passing it through the state. On the second page, it is a complete removal of the CDBG program, the Community Development Block Grant Program. Also, elimination of the home program and elimination of the self-sufficiency programs. So at the housing authorities, we have family self-sufficiency money that comes, or that our folks can work towards. And so that would cut out that program completely. So I asked Christian to see if we could get some current information on what that would look like if we transferred it to people in dollars. And so basically for Polk County, which West Valley is unique because a lot of housing authorities have been able to diversify with use of private development and working in public-private partnerships. But primarily, federal funding is what the West Valley Housing Authority relies on. So out of 400 household members, this is for the public housing program, in a total of 341 units, funding would be cut 43%. So what would that look like? That would basically look like 200 individuals, primarily seniors, could lose their housing. And that's a substantial hit for Polk County. For the Section 8 program, which is the housing assistance payment program, that one serves 1,095 household members in Polk County, and that's a total of 508 vouchers. So funding would be cut for at least 500 of those household members and a loss of around 250 vouchers for Polk County. Right now, Polk County can serve up to 775 households, but with the budget we have, it really can only go up to 508, and that's because the rent prices have gone up substantially. So the amount of dollars per unit that the housing authority is assisting with is actually quite higher than it used to be. So really, they say 775, but it really is like 508. For the family self-sufficiency program, there are currently 32 families in Polk County that are working towards family self-sufficiency, and they have collectively banked 91,000 total and growing. And so that would basically eliminate the opportunity for any other families to be a part of that program. I also took up and kind of have collected some of the Salem data. I'm working on the Yamhill data and the Marion County data too, if you would like that. So why did I come here today, right? And really it's because we've been working at a national level to do and see some regulatory relief. And we think we are the best stewards of this money coming directly from the federal government. If 43% were actually cut and provided to the state, likely they'd have to develop some kind of infrastructure to receive the money and then to allocate it maybe back out to the housing authorities, which is what I assume they would have to do. But then they would take money off the top of that to pay for their infrastructure to support that program. So that could be an even further loss for any of the housing authorities. It matters a lot to rural as well because we receive less dollars, and I'm sure Christian can agree that when it comes to applying for funding for the state or any type of formula applications, a lot of times the smaller communities are left out. So what would that look like? I know that while I was on the board, we were denied funding from the state 3 times. Was it 3 times?
Twice.
Twice.
On board, yeah.
Yep. And so that's also because the state recognizes the city of Dallas as urban. So it's unfortunate when that happens. So moving on to the next is the reconciliation bill from the House that just passed. And really it talks about accountability in the HUD programs, and I think that's great. So I just wanted to throw in some of these things. We see fraud, we see some waste, we see some abuse, but we have a very difficult time getting through the regulatory process to get someone terminated off the program when we do suspect fraud. One example at the Housing Authority currently is we had to pay a private investigator almost $12,000 to gather the research necessary to prove this person was committing some form of fraud and then getting them to the process of eviction and terminating their housing assistance. So there's a lot of chances given on the program. And even when we know that there's some fraudulent activity or we suspect there is, just to take that next step and get them off the program is very challenging. So some of those 6 pieces right there, we agree with, but we also are the boots on the ground and can help and assist those and inform some of those decisions rather than just having it taken away completely and handed to the state. The next attachment is the streamlining regulations that we've been working on for a very, very long time at a national level. And we believe that these parts also cut the waste and the fraud and the abuse of the program and asking HUD to give us some relief as housing authorities. And then the second, the last 2 in your packet there are basically the numbers and dollars for both the US and Oregon. And I thought that important so you can see those statistics to go along with that. So I guess our ask here today, or my ask here today, is that if housing is important to you and to your constituents, or you're hearing about it, I would just ask for your support in contacting your state and local officials and your federal delegation, and hope that these level of cuts don't actually come to our community. And I'm happy to answer any further questions you may have.
I have a couple of questions, if you don't mind. I appreciate the presentation, and I think counties ought to engage in these conversations, as oftentimes multiple programs from the federal, state levels converge in county work. We'll hear from our next presenter soon that of the folks served recently to solve their homelessness situation, 95 were housed through Section 8 program. So it is a significant resource in our community and affects the work we do at the county, and really appreciate Housing Authority's partnership with that housing navigation program that's been very successful. And I know those funding realities are in question as well. But I'm curious, so I have urged some of our federal delegation. I was asked by the National Homeless Alliance to do so, and have garnered some signatures, and will continue to do so. So you're preaching to the choir there. But I'm curious if we could talk a bit about the HUD-VASH program. I know that's under threat as well. And also the emergency housing, the emergency voucher program that was meant to be temporary to help weather COVID, the pandemic. I'm curious if you have any insight on those two programs ongoing, the one for veterans and then the emergency housing voucher program. And I know we had struggles in Polk County to capture the benefits of that. But,
for HUD-VASH, we actually just recently added 5 additional vouchers because
Great.
HUD did an incremental increase for housing authorities to apply for. So we have 25 VASH vouchers right now. We are struggling a little bit with the local VA because they have to do the referrals, and we haven't been receiving the referrals. And that's pretty much hotel across the whole state. Almost every housing authority has an issue with the local VA getting those referrals to them and then getting that.
When you say local for us means our Polk County Veteran Service Office.
Yes. Well, no, I'm sorry.
Okay.
No, it would be the
Giving you a
VA.
chance to clarify that.
So the VA is actually administered out of Portland. So it's caseworkers out of the Portland VA that administer casework here in Polk County and Lincoln County. But obviously for our purposes, it would be those that are
I'll
served.
make sure that we're clear that
Yeah.
our local
It's
Veteran
not
Service
our-
Office has nothing to do with
Right,
this.
right.
Can't help, can't
It's
do
the
anything.
Federal Veterans Administration, yeah. So as far as funding, I haven't heard anything that would curtail the amount of funding that's currently allocated to HUD-VASH. I don't know if you've heard anything.
I haven't heard any specific call outs, but I've made a note and I can follow up with you.
Personally, I think that would be damaging towards the administration's kind of standing, so I can't imagine they would do that, but.
yeah, and obviously multiple HUD programs are under potential threat. Again, we're in a waiting period, including the continuum of care program, McKinney-Vento program for homeless youth in schools, et cetera. So all of these are going to sort of, if there are major changes, if it goes to block grants to state, which I'm curious, there are struggles administering these federal programs, and there are unique struggles administering these programs in the state. And as you said, the direct payments, I think that's the biggest risk is losing the direct appropriations to housing authorities. Why add additional layers of bureaucracy and administration when we can locally figure out what's needed and solve those issues? So this is something I'll continue to watch, but I think no matter what happens, continuing our conversations through paths or other means to the best we can minimize the impacts of any cuts and to maximize the resources that are still available to us. So I appreciate it.
I'm just glad to see you've got a couple that, for me, it's always about family and kids. 18-year-olds, when they turn 18, they get kicked out of their housing. So I see you have funding set aside for them. That's crucial. A lot of them turn 18 before their senior. A lot of them turn 18 before their senior year of high school, and they lose their housing because their hosts no longer get paid. So it's great seeing that funding set aside. And the others are elderly, or the elderly are living on Social Security based on the income back in the 90s. It's minimal. And the problem, especially when they lose one of the two of the marriage and lose a third of their budget. Rentals today is so high, they can't afford to stay in housing. So I hope you keep your focus on those three for me. Thank you.
Thank you.
So I guess your message simply is you want us to be, you want us to advocate for status quo. And that's what I'm hearing. And clearly, as you've indicated, the pie is already in the oven here. And the House has already passed this. Senate's going to deliberate over it, and we're going to end up with a dead split here between Democrats and Republicans. And part of this, in my view, has been because there has been fraud, waste, and abuse across so many programs, not just HUD, and its programs, that the Republican side has said, that's enough. We're not gonna do this anymore. We're gonna fund this at its current level, and we need to see reform. And so what I want to hear from you guys is like, okay, the alarm bell's been rung, the threat has been made, and the reduction in fees are coming in some fashion. I mean, even if the Senate adjusts this, they're going to go back and forth. They're going to make changes in federal programs. And so the question I always have is, how can we advocate for the changes that need to be made, that you've suggested that need to be made? How can we advocate for that and still manage these dollars on a local level, which I support? I agree that, you know, putting the state, any state, but the state especially, in charge of more regulatory responsibility or more oversight on dollars does not fix anything. And we're not making it better by doing that. But my guess is that there has been enough waste, fraud, and abuse blatantly discovered across the nation that legislators have said that we have to do something. And the agencies have said we have to do something. So status quo isn't going to work. So that's what I want to know is, you know, how can we advocate keeping local control and making those changes and making a difference? So, I mean, Jessica, you just described that you guys have problems with some of this stuff, and I get it, and I'm sympathetic to it. But if your hands are tied and you just described challenges with the VA's office, and we can't get some of the things done that should get done. I mean, how do we fix that? And how do we describe to our legislators that, hey, we have a plan. We have ideas on how to make this better. So advocate for us not disrupting our current process and direct funding, but how do we help make sure that it's better? And again, I think those ideas have to come from local. Mm-hmm. We can't wait for the federal government agencies to tell us how they think it's going to get done, because their only solution is just cut funding, right? Yeah. So, I mean, honestly, that's what I want to understand, because my expectation is that we have 2 U.S. senators who are going to completely say, we don't want any changes made. We want all status quo, right? They're not listening to anything about how to fix some of the challenges that we have. Again, this is not the only program. And again, I'm hearing it from a lot of people, but it's like, how can I help you if I don't know what your ideas are on how we can do that?
That is an excellent question, and I would love to answer that right now. That is the reason why I included this in your packet. So we can do more with less. That's not really the challenge. The challenge is we don't want the state pass through. That's where we lose even more of the dollars. So whatever the cut is, you can add more cut on top of it if it goes through the state. So we say, please don't do that. Just let us we're the best stewards of this money. We know what the community wants, and every community looks differently. So this streamlining regulations in the housing assistance and community development program is the exact answer to that question. There have been regulations upon regulations. The number one you'll see here is HOTMA, and I know that doesn't mean much for someone that works outside of HUD because they have so many acronyms for everything, but essentially they're just adding compliance and compliance and compliance and compliance. And so HOTMA had a 10-1 implementation, a 1-1 implementation. There's now a July 1 implementation, and they don't even have the system set up for us to comply. So, and now the state, they're doing our compliance monitoring reviews, and they're holding us to that standard when we can't even work to that standard because their software doesn't work. And so with the basically reduction in staff at our field office down to 3 people, we're going, what do? We can't comply with this. The state's telling us we have to comply, and we need this to go away completely. It's things like this that need to go away, because all we end up doing is having to add staff to try to learn these new programs and to completely start over with all the things we've been doing since the end of time. And yeah, and then you've got Build America, Buy America. Well, I'm the director of development, and I can tell you, having to go through and sort, well, it's a great in theory, the process of vetting vendors, it's so burdensome. I don't understand it. And I've been to 16 classes on BABA. And so we're going to have to hire a consultant to help us with that. And so it's just these more things we have to learn in order to just work in the programs we do. And if we can get some of this regulatory relief, and this is why we're setting it at a national level. These are all the housing authority groups of the entire country. We're all feeling it. And we just need these things to go away so we can do business as usual. It would allow us to not have to hire a whole bunch of new staff to try to learn all of these things. And staff constraints are real at the housing authority. I would say each of us is doing 3 to 4 jobs already, and we're doing a really good job, I might say. But it's tough. It's tough to keep staff with that level of burnout. And so, yes, we can do more with less. Absolutely. We need help, and we need to remove the red tape so that we can do so. We need to be able to decide when it's time to terminate somebody based on fraud or waste by what our community says. We put out a public housing authority plan every single year, and who vets it? It's our local community. They're the ones telling us what they want us to do. And so that's my pitch really, is that we can do less with more, but we need some help. Just pull. So if you're talking to somebody, and I did share this with Bence's office, because he was very interested in hearing what regulatory relief we could use in order to receive less money, and was very appreciative that we had those ready to share with him. So thank you for the question. That would be a great help.
When was this letter sent to the secretary?
That's a great question. I will get the date for you exactly, but it's within the last couple months.
And have you had any response from his office?
Nothing.
And who is the lobbyist that should be knocking on their door on a regular basis?
We use NARO, which is don't ask me I don't know that acronym this early in the morning, but they have been attempting. So a couple people that have worked at the higher level HUD and headquarters who can't speak freely right now, they're given a list of speaking points, and our regional HUD person has shared that with us. But speaking with a human directly in that office, they recommended we do a FOIA request in response. So that's the Freedom of Information Act, so that we can get some response, basically a public records request, writing that in the subject line to see if anybody can tell us what we might be expecting, because we have obligations to implement HOTMA July 1st, and there's still no guidance.
And that's, sorry.
I was going to ask you a question, but I don't want to cut you off. So if you got a thought, go ahead.
I'm just saying that's my fear, is that, working in this line of work, whether it's federal funding, state funding, talking to people engaged in the work and trying to meet compliance requirements, and talking to those employees at the local level, at the state level, there are so many great ideas for reform in process. But with the fear of, I don't know what it is. Generally, bad actors make for really bad policy and bad rules, but the ideas are there. However, I don't feel that there's a strategic intention to make these programs better. But if there is, I really think we need to insert ourselves during those rulemaking processes as aggressively as we can. But it worries me that you're being asked to file a freedom of information request to start planning for that. And that's tells me that there isn't a whole lot of intention. And the loss of folks at the regional HUD office has delayed contracts for our continuum of care. We passed a budget that is a hyper conservative budget. We're not budgeting for funds we know we're going to get at some point, but we don't have any certainty on the amounts, on the timing. So it's causing staff cuts. It's causing ironically incredible inefficiencies. So I'm kind of venting here, but I think the more we all talk about this and when those opportunities do arise, it sounds like we have a sympathetic representative. Let's all get involved and see what we can do, because we know what the reforms are that are needed. We know the goals that we need to achieve. And that local knowledge is really valuable. So I appreciate it. So I'll shut up.
Oh, it's fine. The challenge here, we're talking about federal law, sausage making here. And I've done just enough of that to realize that we can stand here on a stump and scream our heads off, and it doesn't really affect how decisions are made in DC. I know what affects decisions in DC, and I want to know who those people are. I mean, who they are that are actually speaking on behalf of housing authorities and all of these programs that you're talking about. And I don't know any of these acronyms and any of these groups that you're talking about, but hopefully they have a voice that means something when they knock on congressional doors. But my question to you is, so what's NACO doing? Who's the legislative manager at NACO that's supposed to be working on this? And how come I've never seen anything from NACO? And so I'm just asking you because this is something you've been engaged in, so I assume that you've tapped on that door, trying to see what's our National Association of Counties doing in regard to this. And then the other thing is, I don't know what the counterpart is for the cities, but there is one. What are they doing? And so when you push this all down to, I'm just giving you my politics 101, all this down to your self-interest and all of your peers' self-interest, housing authorities, the legislators know that. And that is not as effective, of course, as when you have the Association of Counties and the Association of Cities also knocking on those doors. Now, again, the problem we have here is the stew's already cooked, half cooked here. And so I don't know what the process is going to be to fix this stuff other than some rulemaking. And again, that ends up in the executive branch. And we have to convince people in the executive branch, as your letter is trying to do. But if we had endorsement from these larger associations, their lobby groups, also with you on those things, that matters. I just worry that perhaps we're quite a ways behind. And I don't know how effective that's going to be, but I think that we need to look into that as well and sound the bell. Again, Association of Oregon Counties, where are they on this issue? I don't know. Haven't heard a word from them. I personally haven't heard anything from them. So
I was involved in the housing task force work a bit. We heard a bit of it. They're folks on the state level. The NACO level has not passed my committee, Human Services and Education. But there's a task force that I just saw, so I'll follow up on that.
So all I'm pointing out is I'm also soapboxing a little here. We have some infrastructure in place to help us lobby on some of these things, but they haven't picked up the message soundly like you are. And we need to be pushing on them and saying, hey, that collective voice matters. And we need to see that what their interests are in writing. They should be, again, Association of Oregon Counties should have all counties in the same space with regard to helping on this and advocating for the solutions that you guys are saying. Thank you for the opportunity.
Ronald Reagan said it best, we're the government, we're here to help. The most dangerous words you'll ever hear. But our congressmen, just like the state level and federal level, they make all these guidelines and rules and regulations for you to follow. But they never check with staff to see if it's doable within the time frame. And that separation of reality really hamstrings those of you on the streets trying to do the right thing. So I'll send in.
I think a great case in point, as Christian has pointed out, and it obviously riles me up when I hear that the state and federal veterans group or association, not association, services agency slows things down. And clearly we know what it's like to invest in local services and make certain, I mean, bottom line is if we all heard that we were slowing things down in a process to get veterans into homes, we would fix that. And so, but what do? Even our own state agency is challenging. And how do we fix it? We can't get, I mean, this is the governor's job, right? And it's frustrating.
We
So,
get a bigger voice. So
yeah,
hopefully
bigger voice.
coming here and getting your voice is wonderful, because we do engage a lot with our city lobbyists who does try to get the pulse of these federal issues, and was able to arrange meetings when I went to DC this March. So it does work, but it's those bigger organizations and their voice that really stand out. And so really appreciate your comments around that, because I think that could really help.
Okay, anything else?
I just want to draw a contrast between the City of Salem Housing Authority and the West Valley Housing Authority. We're a much smaller entity. We have 18 full-time employees. I don't have the luxury of adding staff. We just take on whatever mandate comes and we have to deal with it. So if that means more time spent for me or staff to digest, understand, implement these new policies, it's a little different than Salem, and I'm not saying it's bad. It's just we are very small. I've been in this industry for 25 years. Housing authorities are incredibly nimble. We've had to be nimble because we're always getting thrown these unfunded mandates that we have to figure out how we're going to handle. By and large, I would say, in my experience over the last 25 years, a lot of what's proposed here is probably not going to come to fruition, but it does give us the pulse of what the federal administration is contemplating in their thinking. So that's just my spiel. So, and then as far as fraud and abuse, we are very conservative and we're very aggressive with our clients, and much to the chagrin of some of the community. I think they get a little upset because clients are complaining that they're kicked off the program. We do not put up with fraud and abuse. We've been very successful in not having the $12,000 fraud and abuse investigation. So I just want to share with the board that we are very good stewards of our monies and make sure that the program's administered to the utmost integrity. Thank you.
Question for you, Christian. Sorry, it prompted, and Jessica mentioned it, but West Valley is fairly I want to say highly leveraged with public housing units.
Yes.
Versus the market-based.
Correct.
I know that you were contemplating some conversions to that, which is a Mount Everest climb over. Should we be advocating to maintain funding levels for those public facilities, or do you, if you could say, hey, if you could be given a grant, would it be to help convert those, or would it be to maintain those as they are, but fully fund them?
I think we need a firm direction either way.
Mm-hmm.
Within the last 10 years, HUD's been basically setting the tone that public housing, they want to do away with it.
Mm-hmm.
So they offered this rental assistance demonstration for you to take your public housing and move it to a Section 8 supported funding stream.
Mm-hmm.
But then we run into problems at the state where the state wants to preserve units that are losing their subsidy, or the governor now wants to see new production, which rightfully so. We don't have enough units out there. So I think that's where we've kind of fallen in their funding, is we're just not a critical priority for them because we are choosing to take it away from public housing subsidy into Section 8 subsidy.
Mm-hmm.
But what they don't understand is the purpose for us to do that is to insulate us a little bit more from the public housing program, which has been up and down, up and down, up and down the last 20 years, and to potentially leverage those funds that we garner from these conversions into new development, which would support the governor's agenda to add new units. But right now, we're kind of in a stalemate. We just can't seem to move past that.
Very risky too.
Yes.
To pull the trigger on something like that.
Yeah.
And dependent on the state awarding funding.
Yeah.
Which has been a challenge
Yes.
out here.
Yeah.
Thank you both.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time.
By the way, you should have given that speech in front of Congress.
Thank you.
That's very good. Yeah. I could see you on the camera in my mind in front of the right committee.
I'll do it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, again, it may be too late for that, but we'll see.
I'll still do it.
All right. All right. Stephanie, Ryan, are you guys coming up?
We are.
All right. Talk to us about point in time. I think we have papers.
And you guys want some papers too?
Oh, thank you.
All right, want to make sure?
All right, good morning. My name is Stephanie Gilbert. I am the program manager for the Polk County Family and Community Outreach Department.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Ryan Pollard. I'm the, I also work for Polk County Family and Community Outreach as a homeless prevention and outreach coordinator. And we're here this morning to talk about the point in time count, which was recently conducted in January of this year. And so the point in time count, or the PIT count, essentially is a required housing and urban development count that each region in Oregon has to conduct every other year. So it's a biannual count for individuals experiencing literal homelessness. So that's the unsheltered homeless population.
It's a
And so-
one-day snapshot.
Yes, and it's a one-day snapshot. So the point in time count for us happened on January 22nd. And so we surveyed folks here in the community saying, hey, where did you sleep on the night of January 22nd? And we also surveyed them asking a bunch of other questions like demographics, income, disabilities, a whole bunch of things that really help us gather information on the individuals. And so we're going to be talking about this orange sheet first, and that front page with that 308 number. That's what I'm going to be referring to first. So this year we partnered with over 15 local agencies here in rural Polk County, as well as 30 other individuals who volunteered to do this point in time count as well. This year, we know that the point in time count in the past, it hasn't really given a realistic number of who's experiencing homelessness here in our county. We're asking people on one night of where they slept, and we have about a week to do it. And so this year we wanted to be a little more strategic in the sense of we wanted all local agencies in rural Polk County calling their clients, asking their clients, surveying their clients, who's on their caseload, where they slept on the night of January 22nd. And we also wanted outreach teams in the field going to places where we know people were staying, not just really going out kind of willy-nilly, but we know that there's outreach teams here in Polk County where we work very closely with them. And so we were very strategic about where we went. We went to encampments where we knew that people were sleeping, RVs. We worked very closely with code enforcement and law enforcement to identify where these folks were. And so essentially, as we did the count, to wrap things up, we had 308 total individuals experiencing homelessness or at risk of homelessness. And this is an unduplicated number. So every single survey that was conducted, every single one of them was filtered through to make sure it wasn't the same person. If it was the same person, we weeded it out. And so this is an unduplicated number. Of those 308 individuals that we surveyed, 186 of them were adults, 25 plus, 37 were youth, 18 to 24, and then 85 of them were children, 0 to 17. Below, you can kind of see the breakdown of breaking it out for unsheltered, sheltered, and at risk. And so the majority is unsheltered. We had 135 people that were sleeping outside, in a vehicle, RV with no hookups, or a place not meant for habitation. We found people that were sleeping in sheds. One person was sleeping in like a boat covering outside. People were sleeping in people's backyards. So this would be considered place not meant for habitation. We had 81 sheltered homeless individuals. So this was counting people in the Confederated Tribes of Grand Ronde Shelter, Gales Lodge, Edgar Hall. So all of our transitional housing programs that were here, that's where that number comes from. It also comes from the Polk County Warming Center that night. And so who's slept in that January 22nd at the Polk County Warming Center? And so we want to make sure we captured those too. One of the harder ones to capture was the at-risk of homelessness. We know that there are a lot of people that are at potential of experiencing homelessness, whether they're having an eviction or they're staying with a friend, they don't know what their next step is. And so we really wanted to focus on this population as well, because we know that that's very prevalent here. And so we had folks who went out and did surveys. We had them keep a sheet with them and track if somebody had an eviction, that they talked to within 30 days. We wanted to capture their information so then we can also follow up with them. And so 92 were at risk of homelessness. The demographics are right below, but I want to kind of move to the right with the pie charts. So of the unsheltered homelessness, the majority of them were sleeping in their vehicle or RV. And so we consider this the hidden homeless. You don't see them on the streets as you do in Salem. A lot of times in Salem, you could just easily go downtown and you can find a whole bunch of people. It's not that case here. It's very hidden here. And so we had to be very strategic this year and very thoughtful about how we plan to capture these people. And so we had 17% staying in park or an encampment, and then we had 19% stay on a street or sidewalk. So there are, definitely people here staying on the street and sidewalk. Of the at-risk population, and so this is essentially defined as somebody who's going to lose residence within 14 days. 75% of them were couch surfing. So again, hidden homelessness, people you don't normally see on the streets. And so we had the strategy this year of let's work with everyone who is already working with these folks and capture them in the pit count. Below is a snapshot of what we've done over the last 5 years. 2021, when we hardly even heard about what the pit count was, and Brent DeMoe was our only staff, we just captured the 5 folks that we were working with back in 2021. As we started to learn more about what the pit count was, 2022, we started to track a little bit more and work with a little bit more people experiencing homelessness. 2023, 91 total individuals that are unsheltered, and then 2025, 135. And you guys might be looking at those numbers and being like, oh my gosh, like homelessness is increasing, more people are coming to Polk County. And I just want to say on these numbers, we've had a really good strategy and approach this year than I think we ever had before. We've had more community partners and local agencies than we've had before, counting their caseloads, going out and doing street outreach and capturing everyone we possibly can to give the most realistic snapshot of the pit count for this year. And so that's where we see that increase for that number. If you guys flip it over, we wanted to give a breakdown for what's happening in your city, what's happening in Dallas. So Dallas did have the most individuals experiencing homelessness or at risk of, and that wasn't surprising to us. We know that corrections is here. We know that there's a lot of people coming out of that realm. The academy buildings here, there's a lot of services here. And so the majority were in Dallas. We did have 36 of that 96 though sheltered. And so a good portion of those were sheltered. In Dallas, 87% had verifiable connection to rural Polk County. So when we asked folks during the pit count, we asked them, do you have a verifiable tie to rural Polk County? And we would explain, what rural Polk County was, excludes West Salem. And we would also ask them, a verifiable tie includes, did you grow up here? Have you lived here? Have you had a job here? Do you have a verifiable connection that we can pinpoint you that you've been here? And so 87% for Dallas. Monmouth and Independence, you can see Monmouth's on the top right, 75 total, 89% have verifiable ties. And what you'll see through this sheet is not everyone has ties here. And so we want to work with those who have ties, but we wanted to really capture that this year. And you can see on each of these boxes in the blue in the pie charts, it's just a lot of hidden homeless. So we'll just go down the list here. Independence had about 45 individuals experiencing homelessness or at risk of, 87% had ties. Fall City, we had 24 with 92% having ties. Grand Ronde and Willamina on the bottom, we've actually captured more data than we ever have in Grand Ronde. And then we actually tracked a realistic number for who was sheltered out there as well. So 62 people from Grand Ronde, 40 of them were sheltered, 17 unsheltered, and 5 at risk. We worked very closely with McKinney-Vento Liaisons, Oregon Department of Human Services, Polk County Behavioral Health, Polk County Corrections, Grand Ronde Tribes. We worked with a lot of partners to really give the best snapshot we possibly could. And so this data is going to be posted on our PADS website, pc-pads.com. You can see that down at the bottom. And I think before we move on to the next sheet, I think I'll open the floor for some questions if you guys have them.
And I have a tight time crunch here, and
Okay.
so I'm not gonna cut off questions, but
Great.
I'm gonna keep.
Let's just keep it rolling then.
Because I do have another item on this agenda.
Awesome. All right. So the last sheet that we're just going to be talking about is this blue sheet here. And this essentially highlights all the work that we've done since June 2023, when we created a homeless response system for rural Polk County. So essentially, this is when I was hired. At the time, my coworker Grace was hired, and we started to really create what a homeless response system would look like. And so this is a snapshot of who we have housed since June of 2023. So we have 369 total homeless individuals housed in rural Polk County. The majority of these are families. So you see that there's 111 parents, 178 kids. We very highly prioritize families. We've seen a lot of people fleeing domestic violence. They've gotten to a bad situation, lost their job, and they can't provide, one income for a family of 6. We've helped people living in RVs. And so we very highly prioritize families, not that we don't for single individuals. However, we want to make sure kids are stable, that they're in-housed. And so that's kind of been our priority since June of 2023. A breakdown right below in the columns. We essentially have like 3 housing programs that we've collected here. One is rapid rehousing. And so rapidly rehousing folks experiencing literal homelessness that are from rural Polk County. So all of these folks are from rural Polk County. They have verifiable ties to rural Polk County.
That's a state program.
Correct. It's a state program. And so this number is actually higher. We house people on, every week. But the majority of these being families, 56 parents, 94 kids. I also just want to note really quick on this. I'm not trying to boast on our program. However, we work very, very closely with landlords. We do a very intentional job of housing people in the right place. We do a lot of vetting. And the way that our process has worked, we've actually had landlords tell us, you guys have had the best rapid rehousing program. I've had landlords say that they don't want to work with other rapid rehousing programs. And they even call me saying, hey, we have a 2-bedroom available. Do you have a family? And so I just wanted to highlight that because I feel like it really shows that we have a really good process for how we've been able to house families. As well as in the recent PADS meeting we had, Community Action shared that we have the highest success rate for people that are in our rapid rehousing program, staying housed, moving towards self-sufficiency, and completing their goals. We have the highest rate amongst all rapid rehousing programs in Marion and Polk County. And so it just shows that our process is working, and we're going to continue to do that. Really quick, the middle column shows someone experiencing homelessness or a family experiencing homelessness that's had a Section 8 housing voucher. We work with them and the housing authority to use that voucher to get them housed and into a stable environment. On the right-hand side, we call this general deposit assistance. So someone is experiencing literal homelessness, they're living in their car, they have income, we want to help them find a place, work with a landlord, and get them in somewhere. And then we help with deposit and first month's rent. A lot of folks in this category aren't able to afford that initial deposit, especially, if they're slapped with a $5,000 deposit. We want to be able to help them get in there initially, and that can continue good growth going forward. And they can be self-sufficient moving forward.
And that's the prevention, those are prevention funds through community action.
Correct.
Generally, yeah.
Yep. And out of landlord engagement meetings that we've had on a quarterly basis, we host these luncheons and we pull as many landlords as we can together. And not only to talk about our program, but to really discuss how we can house people in the right way. What are the barriers you're seeing? And one of the things that landlords actually told us is, you guys are doing great work housing all these families. What's a way for you guys to get some of that deposit money back so that it can go to another family? And so we've been able to work with the majority of landlords to help get that deposit money back and then putting it towards other families in need.
So Ryan, what's the average cost to get a family into a house in Polk County?
Average cost. As well, if it's deposit and first month's rent, I would ballpark it around $5,000-$6,000.
The highest one we've paid was about $11,000 to get somebody just in.
Yeah. And it's really hard too, if someone has anything on their background. Usually if they do, they charge an extra deposit, which is, it's valid because the landlord wants to make sure that that their butt's covered too. And so we see a lot of those higher deposits and Good question.
Median rent, I believe in Polk County is hovering around 1,500 a month,
Yep.
fairly high.
And most places require about 2 to 3 times that.
Yeah.
And so if someone has a minimum wage job, a lot of what we see, McDonald's working almost full time, it's not going to be able to cover just a normal place here in Polk County.
That landlord engagement piece is an example that the
Yeah.
state should follow.
Yeah.
And I talk about it a lot at the regional level,
Yeah.
because I don't see it happening in other regions.
Yeah.
And it serves a couple of purposes. It provides tenants with support, provides landlords with assurance
Hmm.
and understanding of the system and keeps those rental units in the market.
100%.
Because the more failures that a private landlord experiences, the more likely that they're going to shut down rental units. So it is a model, and I can't tell you how frustrating it is to see others not quite engage that fully, because I think you have a lot of landlords at the table.
We do. We have a lot of landlords, and this data, we don't take credit for it. This is not possible without landlord engagement, them being willing to, have grace for people and house families in need. It's just an amazing partnership.
Great job.
Yeah. Any questions?
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Great work.
Thanks, Stephanie. Thank you so much.
You're very welcome.
Now, are you, is this like a slow assassination?
It's the last one of the year. Yeah, last one. All right, non-listed items. Morgan tells me he has one.
Yes, Commissioners, if I may, back in October of 2024, the board passed Order 24-15, directing staff to essentially declare some property no longer needed for county purposes, and directed the staff to list the property for sale. This, just for the record, the property is at address is 945 Southeast Uglow Drive Avenue, Dallas, Oregon, 97338. At this point, we have gone through the process of selling the property, and I would ask now for a board order directing Mr. Hawkins to finalize any last paperwork necessary to complete the transaction.
So moved.
I'll second.
Been moved and seconded. Further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, passed unanimously.
Thank you, Commissioners.
Any other add-ons? We are adjourned.
Quantified this add-on.
Yeah, I can't.